How are you doing, Brian?
I'm good. The reason I was slightly delayed is I was hooking up. So it's a common thing now for like synth manufacturers, Roland or whatever, to make these little modules, which basically recreate all the insides of classic synths. And I have a Juno module for the I think
Mm-hmm.
it's the 106 Juno 106. That like if you hook it up to a MIDI controller, it is just like
Mm-hmm.
playing on a Juno without the obviously the keyboard action is different, but it has exactly the same sounds as the
Whoa.
Juno synth. So I have a Juno and a Jupiter, and they make one other. I'm not even sure if they still make them. It was like a limited edition thing a few years ago, and like surprisingly not stupid expensive either. Like they were a couple $100 for these classic synths that if you bought the actual synth, it would probably be like a grand or something.
Yeah, totally.
And so I was in the middle of like hooking it up. It was very exciting. I've had this thing for a while, but I've just never really used it. It's very exciting.
Yeah, that's awesome. What's like your dream synth?
I'm not a gearhead, uh, like for example, Doctor Sung is. So
Sure.
I don't know enough about what all the the real classic like hard to get stuff is. I would love. I mean, it's a real basic one now, but a Moog Sub 37, which is a current. You can currently get it, and it just has a lot of great sounds. I mean, it's not like out of reach. This is not like a oh my god. If
Yeah,
someday I could go get one for probably I don't even know how much they are, but it's not like $10,000 or something. I'm sure it's
sure.
not cheap, but it's not like oh my god, if only. This is the out of print thing that only
Totally.
was existed in 1972.
Sure, totally.
But I don't know enough about it. Like I never really fuck with all the knobs and shit. Like I just kind of, you know, dial things to how I like them. And most of the stuff I do is on software rather than like hardware anyway. So it's
Yeah, totally.
I've never really gotten into it as much as I would. Part of me wants to, but part of me is also like I don't know. It's kind of a black hole.
Yeah, I've been like constantly thinking about on the Anthony episode where he was like, "Listen, everybody's kind of a gearhead about something," and it's like, God, that's so true. He's right.
Yeah, even you can be a gearhead about software, right? You don't need to be a gearhead about
Yes.
hardware. Yeah.
Yes, absolutely. You
I
can be a
mean,
gearhead about stupid keyboards. I'm thinking about, but I don't need another keyboard. How many keyboards do I currently have? Four. How many computers do I currently have? Two. um,
I was very interested in the tweet you put out. I think it was yesterday about Dvorak versus
yes.
QWERTY. So talk to me about your thought process because there are. Is it first of all, is it Dvorak like the composer or Dvorak? Do you know the pronunciation?
I was saying Dvorak like a scrub, but it sounds cooler the way that you're saying it.
Well, that's the class. The famous composer is Dvorak,
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
but I don't know if it's the same diacritical marks in the name, that sort of stuff. And also, I'm sure I'm not even
I don't.
pronouncing that name right.
It's a word, but yeah, that's what I was going to bring up is that I've been thinking about switching from QWERTY to Dvorak, however you say it, whatever it is. Just because I was watching I was like, I'm already a big nerd about keyboards. How can I make this worse? And it's been kind of cool with the split keyboard that I've got going on right now. Like half of it doesn't work yet. So I've been trying to like relearn how to type because I was never like good at typing like home key stuff because
Oh
I
yeah,
just taught myself. So by
me
the
too.
time that I was officially learning, it was just like, all right, this is fucked. Um,
Is your split keyboard like split like two detached halves?
oh yeah, they're like little cyber mittens,
Nice.
and they have thumb clusters on them. So instead of a space bar, you have like I'll just send you a picture of it later. It's very weird looking,
Cool.
but it's really cool. It makes way more sense. It's ortholinear, so like I don't understand why every keyboard isn't completely ortholinear
Yes.
because with like the way that staggered that like why would you move your fingers diagonally repetitively when you could just go up and down? I don't understand why this is not the thing.
I don't understand. I was thinking back, when people were using typewriters all the time, which was a significant portion of the 20th century. Given the amount of
Hmm.
force that you had to use to push down those keys, like, how did people not have? I mean, maybe they did. I guess the answer is probably they did, but you don't hear much about people having severe repetitive stress injuries, you know, in
Mm.
the while using typewriters. My guess is lots of people did, and we just don't hear about it. And probably most of those people typing were young women anyway, and we're just like no one cares about young women's health problems. So they're probably just swept
Yeah.
off into the dustbin of history.
Yeah, well, and that's sort of like why Dvorak is a thing, because with QWERTY, like with typewriters, you wanted to go at a speed that made sense, but that wouldn't cause a jam. So, like, it's kind of opposite of how you want a typewriter to work if you type fast.
Right.
But obviously, we don't need that sort of force or, worry about things getting jammed now. So Dvorak puts all of the vowels in the middle row, and
Yes.
it just like has way less key travel because it's all the combinations that make more sense, even though it's not QWERTY. And if you watch side by side videos of it, like you watch somebody doing Dvorak and their fingers like barely move, and then with QWERTY, it's like, wow, why do we do this? This sucks.
Yeah, totally.
So I will probably buy another keyboard and do that and learn that.
And you can remap your keys, right? On a keyboard. Can't
Oh
you do that?
yes,
Right?
indeed.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's part of why I was so excited to get the split keyboard, because you can program layers onto it, so you can just switch between completely different like key bindings and stuff that you can make specific to programs or video games and stuff. But I've like programmed a bunch of the existing keys to just be macros that I use all the time, like having just a Control S key,
Yeah.
because I love to program for several hours and then lose it. Very exciting times. I just love when software that is supposed to work doesn't work.
I was thinking recently, so I use, some audio programs like Logic a lot, and I have just never bothered to learn most of the keyboard shortcuts involved. And at some point, like intellectually, I realized that I should. Like it would make my life vastly easier, I'm sure. It was actually only once I
Yeah.
started editing this podcast that I was like, you know what? But before that, it was all like MIDI stuff generally. So when I
Yeah.
started editing this, it was like, well, maybe there's got to be a keyboard shortcut that just takes you back to the beginning, but it's one of those things just acting against my own self interest by not taking I mean, generously 1 minute to learn, like literally just Google Logic keyboard shortcuts, and
Yeah.
bam, it, I don't understand it.
With Photoshop, I always think that like, I've been using Photoshop for a decade. I'm pretty proficient at it. And then I watch my friends use Photoshop, and I just like cannot believe the speed with which they do things.
Oh my god,
And
yeah,
it's upsetting to me. Like watching back in the old Grumps office, just like watching Matt and Ryan put stuff together. I'd just be like, what the fuck,
it's
man?
crazy,
How
and
are you so fast at this?
I think it's also I don't it's I mean well tell me if this is the case for you. I think there's something like kind of if you studied it in school, like you had to learn a lot of that stuff, and some of the people I know that are really proficient at it are not the self-taught people who just kind of like fell into a bad habit on day one and then never stopped, but
Mm-hmm.
the people who like, took a class in Photoshop or whatever, and it was just drilled into them that they have to use these shortcuts, which is why I also find it's kind of an age thing. People who are my age and are sort of hobbyists or just kind of fell into it are terrible at that stuff. And of course, younger people are typically a little better, although you are exactly proving the opposite point in your own experience.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that's interesting to me too, because there's sort of like this, there was the boom of like tech literacy, and now I feel like we're seeing like a little bit of a decline on that, just because like
Hmm.
you don't have to really know your way around a computer to be really plugged into technology and apps and smartphones and stuff.
Yeah.
God, it's impossible to say stuff like that without sounding like a boomer. But like, it's not, you don't have to know much technical stuff like as a prerequisite. You can just kind of plug and play and keep going.
There was an interesting study that came out a few years ago. I remember hearing about this on The Skeptic's Guide to the Universe, which is one of my favorite podcasts, where it basically, like, the question is so there's this kind of conventional wisdom, which is that young people are, let's say, like teenagers, young teenagers, 13, 14-year-olds, are like, they're digital natives and they grew up with everything and they're just so tech savvy. And so the question was like, who is more tech savvy, these 13-year-olds or the teachers teaching them? And it's like 100% the teachers by a long shot, because like, just because you grow up with it doesn't mean you actually know how to, like the ins and outs and have thought deeply about it. And I thought that was
Yeah.
really
Well, and it's
interesting.
also like the inclination to seek it out before the internet, especially, it was just like a layer, like a shitty cling wrap layer on top of everything, and kind of felt more like a geographical place where you log on.
Yeah.
And yeah, the very, very different landscape. At the same time, like really young kids are very good at doing a lot of computer stuff, but it seems like it's in a different direction, I guess, or like requires a lot more intentionality about it. And again, there's like the availability of stuff, of tools, especially of, even something like TikTok, which is really, basic and you can do on your phone. Like it just puts more of the power in the hands of like people who can be young and make things.
Yeah. And just because you grow up with it, I mean, language is a great example, right? I mean, everyone we know is fluent in a language, yet that doesn't mean they deeply understand the structure or have really thought about using language, right? Most of the people who
Yeah,
speak
interesting.
who speak whatever language are not grammarians and have no deep appreciation or knowledge of, you know, etymology or syntax or whatever. And I think tech is kind of the same way. If you just grow up with it, you just kind of use it. And that doesn't mean you've really thought carefully about what it is, why you're doing it, or something even more high level, like how to optimize it.
Sure, totally. Do you consider yourself as somebody who's like interested in language or etymology like that?
Oh yeah, I'm a huge linguistics fan. I've never studied formally, but
Interesting.
most of the like like purely informational, that is to say, non-comedy or arts podcasts I listen to are language based. So I really like Lexicon Valley, Lingthusiasm, Away with Words. Like these are standards on my favorite podcasts, and there's this great blog, Language Log, which is a group blog by a bunch of linguists, and it's like a lot of the kind of casual internet reading I do is it's not like fully academic linguistics, but it's like the next step down from that. So, oh yeah, I'm very interested in that stuff.
That's fascinating. I really don't know anything about that, and I'm also surprised to learn that about you. Like, what can you share any tidbits? Because I can't even imagine what the hell are these podcasts about? How does an episode of those go?
Well, it varies a lot. So, Away with Words is it's less of a linguistics podcast, and I mean, although there are elements of that, but more of a lexicography and slang podcast. So, like they talk about really, I don't know the precise definition, but like a lexicographer is someone who kind of writes a dictionary, right? He's someone who studies
Hmm.
the way words are used. Also, I'm probably fucking up this definition, so if I get this wrong, listeners, tell me. But away with words, a lot of people will call in and they'll be like, "My mom says this. Is that weird?" And they'll be like, "No, in fact, there's people have been saying that for 300 years, in Virginia or whatever." Like it really is an appreciation of how language is used. It's pretty much all English speaking, but not 100%. And so that's really great. And then you have something like Lexicon Valley, which is John McWhorter, and he spends a lot of time on. He'll do different things. Generally that's just him, although occasionally he brings a guest on. Whereas Away with Words has callers, but McWhorter will be like he'll just do deep dives about language families. It's more linguistic oriented. He'll talk about etymology a lot. He's just a really fascinating, compelling guy. He's a professor, I think, at Columbia, and he was actually on a panel I moderated a few years ago at this conference thing. And he's just one of these like really interesting, fascinating dudes who is very well versed in just general culture. A lot of his podcast is him finding excuses to play clips from old musicals, which is really great.
That's very charming.
And then Lingthusiasm it's these two women, one's an Australian and one's a Canadian, and they're like, I think one is an academic linguist, and the other is Gretchen McCulloch. I'm not quite sure how to pronounce her name, but she wrote this great book called Because Internet, which is a
Oh,
yeah.
okay. I was gonna bring that up because you told me to read that, and I got through like half of it, and then I got distracted. I need to finish it.
It's fucking great. Like I love
Yeah,
everything about that book. She's a really really good writer and has so many interesting points about stuff that I like just took for granted that I would see online. And she's one of the hosts of this podcast too. So I don't think she has an academic position. I forget exactly what her deal is, but she is like her deal is she studies internet language, and that's the podcast I'm least familiar with of those three. I just kind of started listening to it a few months ago,
that
and
what's it called again?
Lingthusiasm. Yeah, I could
I will
talk about
definitely check
this
that out.
forever, and I've read like I'd say most of the nonfiction books I read are pop language books, include like the Gretchen McCulloch one. I
Yeah,
just actually there's this guy Lane Green who I really really like, who's written this amazing book called Talk on the Wild Side, as well as others. But just really interesting books. His book is kind of about why. I mean, this is really oversimplifying it, but it's like why efforts to make optimal versions of like the perfect language and things like that just can't possibly work out. So, and just to add one more, because I can't stop talking about this, I read this really wonderful book by Erica Okrent called "In the Land of Invented Languages," where she basically goes through the history of, I think people call them conlangs, like constructed languages. The modern example, like the biggest modern example is Klingon, but you could add
gotcha.
things, whatever, like Tengwar or Dothraki or, a million other, and those are just in fantasy books. Like people have for Esperanto actually is the biggest one.
Yep.
But there's a million other things, and some of them are fun. Like you got to read this book because it's crazy. There was this dude, I can't even remember his name, but he basically wanted words to be. His job was to catalog everything in the universe, and then have these massive books of like tables. And so when you used letters or symbols or whatever in a particular order, like you would be referring to a specific thing in a particular table. Really, like, and the tables, of course, are like, it's just his weird classification of things. So like, I don't even know if this is right, but it would be like, if you want to say dog, you have to look up the table for like companions, and then look up four-legged companions and four-legged companions that bark. And if you follow that path is a particular set of letters, which then is the word for dog. It's fucking crazy.
Wow.
Yeah.
That sounds completely awesome. What am I thinking? Okay, I'm thinking of a particular manuscript that I can't remember the name for, that baffled people for a really long time.
The Voynich manuscript.
Yes, yes, yes.
Yeah, that thing. They
There's,
actually, I saw it. They have it. I think they still have it. If you go to Book Soup, which is an awesome bookstore, I saw.
they like kind of cracked it open, right?
Well, did they decipher it? I don't think they did, but I could be wrong.
I I think that they did, if I recall correctly, because I recently
Really?
a thing
Wow,
that I will do sometimes is
that's
just
huge.
find like early 2000s documentaries from the History Channel and throw them on my CRT from like a YouTube playlist. And I was watching one about the Voynich manuscript, and this was way beforehand, so I was doing like a little bit more research. And apparently, there's like there are like a lot of sex tips in there. Is this a dream I had? Am I making this up?
No, I mean I know this thing, but I'm looking it up right now. I mean the cool thing about this, like if you look at it, just looks amazing. Like the script is just incredible.
Yeah, it's gorgeous.
Let's see, did they crack it?
Okay, this most recent one,
The
February
manuscript has never
2020.
been demonstrably deciphered, is what I see on Wikipedia.
Every few months, I get like deep in this hole.
It looks like there are some people who recently claimed something. Yeah, which people have taken issue with.
Okay, so I gotta dive into this again.
It doesn't seem like there's a widely agreed upon translation.
No. God, I love a mysterious thing. It's so cool. I love with the level of immediacy of information that the internet has, a true mystery is just so exciting.
Have you seen the what is it? It's the the giant sculpture that's in front, like it's on the grounds of the CIA, which is a massive code. Do you know about this?
No.
Okay, it's called
It's
Kryptos with a K, Kryptos, and it is a sculpture slash puzzle, which is on the CIA, like whatever you call it, campus grounds. I don't know. And I believe there are 4 parts to it, and people have cracked 3 of them, and there's a 4th that has still not been deciphered. I think that's right. Yes, that's right. I'm looking it up right now.
yeah. That's a beautiful sculpture.
It's really
Love
cool,
the
yeah.
wood.
And actually, if you read like the story of how they were deciphered and what the codes are, it's cool stuff. Like it's one is a book cipher, I think, based on the Declaration of Independence, maybe, and I forget the other ones, but it's like it's a famous unsolved code. The artist is still alive, but he's not talking.
God, I respect that. I love when an artist does a thing and then shuts up about it.
Yeah.
It's always very exciting. Another one that I just like. I want info on the Zodiac killer, man. I want to see that one cracked in my lifetime. I don't think it's gonna happen.
Is there
Like,
no
dude got away
progress
with
on it? No, like no one knows what's going
Nope.
on. Yeah.
No. It's fuck. I hate that kind of thing is so fascinating because you know it's exactly what the dude wants.
Of
but,
course. Yeah.
it's such a bummer. I mean, it's more of a bummer that a bunch of people are dead, but I want to know what the thing says.
Yeah. Did you? Okay, I have to hear your opinion. I'm gonna guess. Let's see. So my question is, what do you think of the movie Zodiac? Don't tell me yet.
Guess, yeah.
Like many things, I can see you really disliking David Fincher, but there's also. So let me see. I'm gonna guess. I'm gonna guess you dislike David Fincher, and you think he is very overrated, but you kind of like Zodiac. That's my claim.
David Fincher is fine. I hate Zodiac.
Okay.
It
Wow.
manages
Okay.
to take the most interesting story and turn it into just like a fucking snooze fest. I fell asleep halfway through that movie.
So did
and
I.
had to
I.
like back
You know what?
up.
I did too. I was on a plane, admittedly, but yeah, I fell asleep
Good
watching
plane
it.
movie. I mean, and it's got all the people I like are in it. It's about a thing I'm interested in. Beautifully shot. I don't really. Everybody says the picnic scene is really fucked up. I don't know what y'all are talking about.
Yeah, it did not
It's
seem that fucked up. Like it seemed like
it's like
Hollywood
okay,
fucked up. Like
when
it's not
when
fucked up.
people talk about things being fucked up, it's like you're watching a movie about a serial killer. What did you think was going to happen?
Yeah, like there's a base level of like fuck upness, which involves people getting murdered that you're walking in with, right?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I don't know. Yeah, I really wish that I liked that movie, but it's just not really my thing.
I literally
But
just
I really appreciate the guess on what my take was going to be, though. That's kind of delightful.
it was I'd say it was off base. I got that one wrong. But
But your heart was in the right place. Like it was a good extrapolation.
yeah, I think it was fair. I just rewatched after not seeing it for a long time, like probably at least 10 years. Fight Club, and I rewatched it
Oh.
2 days ago, because it was on on one of the apps, and I was like, fuck it, why not? I haven't seen this in a while, and it's it's a very well made movie, but I just don't understand the extreme reverence for it that people have. Like maybe it's because the twist is so
Yeah.
obvious now. I mean, it looks cool, it's well acted, but and I remember liking it,
It definitely
when it
does.
came out. But
It carries the stain of the kind of person who really loves that movie and is obnoxious about it. But I
yes,
think beyond that, it's still just kind of like, yeah, it's fine. It's a good movie. Sure. It's not incredible. And neither is the book. I like Chuck Palahniuk. I think he's a good writer most of the time,
yeah,
even though he continues to insist on, like, I'm going to do a story where it's a bunch of quirky characters all writing their own chapters, but all of these different characters sound like a 50-year-old pervert, which he is. So it's like, dude, why are you going to insist on doing this shtick that you're not good at?
yeah. I've
That
never
said, I really,
honestly been the biggest Chuck Palahniuk fan. Like it's fine, whatever. Uh,
Yeah,
It
I
just,
was definitely into him in college.
I think you and I share this. I hate edgy for edgy's sake. And at some point, it's
Yes.
like, all right, dude, we get it. Like, you're writing this because it feels fucked up and you're, transgressing boundaries and things like that. But come on, dude. Like, I, I,
Yeah.
I would rather have a good story than, another fucking anal bead scene or whatever.
Yeah, this carnival freak show act.
Yeah.
Yeah, I appreciate that to a degree, but he definitely is a big offender on just like, man, write a story. What? It's the world's biggest gangbang. Oh, is somebody gonna die? Great. I
Yeah.
don't care. Choke. I like Choke. Choke's pretty fun.
That's the last book of his I read, actually. And that was a long time ago. It is one of those things where the fans make it worse. Like, if those books existed in a vacuum
Yes.
without any of the reverent fanboys, that would be fine. Actually, I would definitely like them more. I guarantee it. But because
Yeah.
of
I mean, it's
the.
like, I guess this episode will come out before the one where I go on the extended Pixar rant. Yeah, I mean, it's the same thing. It's like, they're fine. It's just response to stuff that can. I mean, in the same way that, like, I love Rick and Morty. I think it's a great show. I cannot bring myself to watch it anymore. Like, it's just been.
That one I can get around because it's so I really it's a really really great show. The last season had ups and downs as might be expected, but it's like overall it's
Yeah.
just so smart and well done. But again, like this, the bad fans are really bad, and
Yeah.
I feel like we might have talked about this on an episode of the podcast, but Emily Nussbaum, the New Yorker TV critic, had a whole thing several years, probably close to 10 years ago, when Breaking Bad was just kind of wrapping up, about bad fans. And specifically, she was talking about the people who were like, fuck yeah, Walter White, fuck that shit up. Oh, yeah, you rule. And it's like,
Or Skylar's such a bitch for
yeah,
not letting Walter do what he
right,
wants.
exactly. Like, the real broy, like, falling down type, alienated.
Missing the point of the show, thinks Don Draper is the coolest,
Yes,
best
exactly.
character, etc.
Like starts basically people who start rooting for the anti-hero without reservation.
Well, because I need my piece of media to tell me exactly how I am supposed to act and feel.
Or that you have to have a sympathetic protagonist, which I mean, all these
Yeah.
things sort of do. It's not like Walter White is without sympathy. Like that's the whole thing is the show is trying to push you into sympathizing with him as he becomes more and more of a monster. So of course
Yeah.
he's sympathetic to an extent. Same thing with Don Draper, although I
Yeah.
don't know. Like Don Draper sucks. Like what an asshole. That's not a deep thought, but come on, the guy sucks.
I mean, that's always the thing. It's always the anti-heroes where it's like, yeah, they're a dick. That I can still enjoy the show. It's good. I'm not going to put him on a pedestal because he drinks whiskey during the day and is mean to women.
Yeah. Well, that's the fucking thing about Fight
Yeah.
Club, and I'm far from the first person to point this out, but like you have to look real hard to see women in that movie because there aren't many of them.
Yeah.
It's like Helena Bonham Carter and then a bunch of people at support groups, and that's kind of it. That doesn't make it
I would just love-
necessarily terrible, but it in this case, I think it certainly doesn't help it.
I was about to say I want more prestige dramas where the shit anti-hero gets to be a woman, but isn't that I have not watched it yet, but is that kind of what Fleabag is? Have you watched that?
I've only seen the first episode, and I loved it, and then I didn't continue. But I don't know what her character is like, how bad she's supposed to be.
Yeah. The vibe I get it from reading about it is horny train wreck. So
That seems about
already
right.
up
Yeah.
my alley. Yeah. I just need to I'll work my way through Sopranos and then I'll move on to greener pastures.
I feel like I'm constantly forgetting. Like, I have this whole list of things I want to see. Fleabag is up there. I got halfway through the first season of Killing Eve, and then, like just kind of stepped away from it. Went on tour or something. I don't even know, and then didn't come
Yeah.
back to it. And anytime I'm sitting in front of the TV about to watch something, I can remember approximately zero of the things on my list that I want to see.
Absolutely. Or I go through the things on the list that are like dozens and dozens of things, and I'm like, I don't really want to watch any of these.
Yes, because they're too much
Like,
of a
you
bummer or
fool.
whatever. Yeah.
Yeah, or even just like, I don't know, accepting new information into your brain for me is like, there's too much. I need to not watch a new thing right now. I cannot integrate new information at this time.
Yeah. And also, I don't want to.
That's
Sorry, go ahead.
no. Go ahead.
I was going to say, because of all the things we just talked about, like, I feel a bit of reservation about becoming a fan of something, knowing how many fucked up fans there are of all the popular stuff. Like, it feels like guilt by association to be like, oh, I really like this thing. Oh, wait, am I a fan now? Oh, God. And
I saw Goody Proctor posting Rick and Morty fan art.
yeah, 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 exactly. But so last night I was like, all right, I want to watch something. And once again, I'm watching The Office, and I'm in season 6, which is not one of the show's high points.
No.
And I was like, all right, the really fun part of the show is over. What else am I doing here? And I settled on a classic I've never seen, which is Sunset Boulevard. Have you seen that?
Oh, no, I haven't. That is a true classic.
It is a true classic. It's Billy Wilder from the 50s, I think 1950 maybe. And it's one of those things that you've seen parodied so much. Like you've seen that Gloria Swanson character parodied all over the place. And it totally, it's like, as you might expect, a little dated, but it's fucking great. And her performance is bananas. Like it's really something seen to be believed. And I was reading a bunch about it too. So she was this is like common background for the movie, but in case people don't know, she was a silent film. So the movie is basically about a silent film star who, lives in this kind of decaying, not quite Grey Gardensy, but not far from it, mansion in LA. And it plans this comeback and kind of takes this young down and out writer, William Holton, into her mansion and falls in love with him and, gets him to basically rewrite or edit her, her magnum opus where she's going to star and it'll be a big comeback. But Gloria Swanson herself was a former silent film actor who, basically had this huge comeback because of Sunset Boulevard. And there's the scene where she's playing bridge with a bunch of like real life former silent film actors, including Buster Keaton.
Whoa.
Yeah.
What year did that movie come out?
1950. So he's pretty old then. And like Cecil B. DeMille is in it playing himself. So it's one of those things where I'm like, I am missing a lot of the cultural background that people had 70 years ago when this thing came out. Because I'm sure people in the movie would be like, oh, fuck, it's Buster Keaton. Where like, I recognize Buster Keaton, but there were 2 other people at that bridge table where I was like, I don't know, like, I guess that's probably some huge star. Who would the equivalent now of like I don't know, someone in there, let's say 80s, where if they showed up in a movie, you'd be like, whoa, they're back.
You would know better than I would, just because you got age on me.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of someone. So it would be someone, if that movie was made in the 50s and the silent film heyday was in like the 20s, right? So let's say it's someone who basically disappeared 30 years ago, right? And so right now, that would be 1990. So who's someone who was a big star in the 80s and then disappeared and then like in middle age?
That's such an upsetting.
I know. Tell me about it.
So 2000 feels like 10 years ago.
I'm trying to think who was like a middle-aged actor in the 80s who then basically kind of, their career went down and then they'd be back. Who would that be? Let me think. My go-to is Max Wright, who played the dad on Alf, but that's I don't know if many people would recognize Max Wright. He was far from a major star.
Yeah, that's certainly a pull.
I can think of a lot of younger people.
Yeah, I'm trying to think of people who aren't dead.
Or too young. Like someone that occurs to me is Molly Ringwald.
Yeah.
But she was like a teen star in the 80s and is still like kind of in the public eye. Like she writes a lot of stuff. She's really, I really like some of the stuff she talks about. She wrote this great piece about watching some of her movies with her teenage daughter. Because those like... Some of those 80s sex comedies are pretty fucked up. And...
Yeah, most of them
Have you seen Revenge of the Nerds?
I haven't, but I know exactly what you were referring to in terms of it being fucked up.
Yeah. Okay, I want to throw that to the audience. Like this question of who, if they came back now, who's someone who's been basically vanished for 30 years from film and they'd come back now, they'd be super old. People would be like, whoa. And movies do this all the time. I mean, shit, like
Yeah.
the new Picard series just came out. So, like, we're watching this happen in real time. But
Yeah.
I don't have a good answer to it.
Yeah, I mean, in terms of like celebrities who kind of like disappear and you're like, whatever happened to them? I have so much respect for those people. They did their shit and they got out of there and now they're doing their own thing. Like I respect getting out of the whole racket.
Yeah, totally. Like, you made your money, go retire.
Yeah, Sam Neill's mentioned it before in the show. Sam Neill just has like a pig farm in New Zealand.
That's so great.
Just posts about wine and his pigs. Like, God fucking bless.
I love it. I love it. It's such a weird thing when, you can go the route of like Dan Aykroyd's Crystal Head Vodka or, what is it? Sammy Hagar's Cabo Wabo Tequila, where you're like, all right, guys,
Yeah.
come on. Like, really? Are you telling me that's really good tequila? Maybe it is. I don't know. I'm skeptical. But like when celebrities start their own alcohol, I'm usually skeptical of that.
Okay, but if a company approached you and was like, "Hey, do you want to have your own brand of hard liquor?" Like, would you say no to that?
Ninja Brian brand sake? No, I would not say no to that. Like, it would be terrifically offensive, cultural appropriation at its finest, and I would.
Oh, I'm not saying that you're the one who said sake.
Yeah. What would I do? I would like, would I have my own bourbon or something? I guess if it was actually going to be good, that's the problem is I don't know enough about the process to like have any form of quality control except, you like make it and
I'm going to argue that none of these people do.
well, that's true. And that's why it sucks. But like, I mean, the other thing with stuff like bourbon is like, you can't just make it and then take a sip and be like, cool. You have to wait
Yeah.
like years. So what would your liquor be? Leighton Gray brand, what?
I mean, it very basic to say like a scotch, but maybe just as a wild card, like a really botanical gin, like something very floral.
That'd be cool. Yeah.
Which isn't even my most favorite thing, but it just feels right,
What would you call it?
Gray something.
Grey Goose.
Fuck. Yeah, gray something gin.
Yeah. What would the name of my boutique bourbon be?
Something like Getting Wrecked with Brian Wecht.
Oh, that. Yeah, Brian Wrecked. That's
Brian Wrecked.
yeah. You know what it is? Actually, that's it. It is grain alcohol, pure grain alcohol, called Brian Wrecked. Yep.
You might go blind in one eye.
Yeah. And don't I know it?
Guaranteed.
I don't. That feels like a good place to wrap it up to me. What do you think?
Yeah, totally. Like I ran out of one of my medications that helps me sleep.
Oh no.
Yesterday, and so I did not have it anymore, and thus I got like 3 hours of sleep.
Oh, I'm sorry.
And I feel like I legally couldn't be considered a person today. Like I just feel like an inanimate object. So I think I'm gonna go to lie on the floor.
Well, have fun. I'm sure Audrey is doing the same thing right now.
Thank you. Oh yeah, tell Audrey I said hello.
I will.
All right, cool. This is the end of the mini-sode. Thanks for tuning in for Gearhead book linguistics alcohol chat.
That's the title. Boom.
Got him. Goodbye.
Bye. Leighton Night is produced by Brian Wecht, Leighton Gray, and Jarek Centeno. Follow us on Twitter at Leighton Night, on Instagram at Leighton_Night, or email us at leightonnight@gmail.com.